Well, hello, and welcome to Stop Let's Team Up. I'm Ross. I'm here with two guests, Kirby Evans and Ted Kilvington.
Hello?
Ted Ted is back after a 2 year after he was on about 2 years ago. And we did the only lineup show I've done. And I'm glad you're back. We're talking about a special comic for a lot of people, Showcase 100. Um, I think fans of a certain age have a love for this comic that many comics don't have. Um, I think it's important in a way historically
Mhm.
as a comic in a lot of ways. But I think we'll talk about that uh, later. Before we get into Showcase issue 100, cover date May 1978, on sale date February 16th, 1978. 60 cents. Editor was Joe Orlando. Writer Paul Cooperberg. Writer Paul Levitz. Both of those are big woohoo. Artist Joe Staten. Again, another big woohoo. Letterer Ben Oda. Colorist Adrian Roy. An immense alien machine is discovered in space, revealed to be a device intended to pull Earth from its solar system. A group of superheroes gather on the JLA satellite and then divide up in classic team-up fashion. Simultaneously, a master power source is located in the American Midwest, leading the challengers of the unknown and Lois Lane to investigate. Green Lantern, Flash, Atom, and Adam Strange encounter resistance from the aliens' device robotic guardians. They are rescued by Space Ranger in his advanced starship, along with his sidekick Cyril. Team Space enters the alien ship and overcomes an alien creature. They discover Earth is already being moved by alien machines. The story then shifts to Earth, showcasing numerous DC heroes responding to the crisis in classic crisis ways. The heroes, including established characters like Aquaman, Green Lantern, Flash, lesser known heroes like Anthro, the Inferior Five, unite to thwart the alien plan. The comic ends as Lois Lane and Angel O'Dare from Angel and the Ape, two non-powered normal humans, save the day. This comic is amazing, and you should find a copy and read it. The digging deep into the issue, I'm going to step away and I'm going to give you the pertinent data of the comic. I'm going to record that separately so the guys don't have to listen to me talk, and we'll be right back. All right, so that was all the pertinent data to the comic and a short synopsis. First question I got for y'all. I think everybody has a little bit of history with this comic and why it's special for them. I'll do mine real quick. My brother handed me comics to read, like read this, check this out. And this is 78. I was 14 or almost 14 when it came out. And he told me like the short history of what Showcase was, and I knew Flash, or, the people that appeared there, we had a secret origin books and stuff like that. But he said, you're going to like this. It's got a whole bunch of characters in it that you've never seen before. And I knew who Staten was. I knew who Joe Staten was. I knew, and I've always been a fan of his art. And I read it and wore the thing out. I think I read it maybe 100 times as a kid, and it got sold when I sold my floppy collection, and I've missed it. And the copy I have now is one Kirby gifted me when he found a better condition one for himself. He sent me this one. It is well loved, I will say that. This is a comic that was well read before I owned it, or Kirby owned it. So that's the so Ted, what's your history on this comic or your take on it?
Well, I did buy it when it came out. I was 9 years old, and it was probably one of the first 10 comics. I mean, I don't know exactly, but how many, but probably one of the first 10 comics I ever bought. I was getting like $1 allowance a week at the time, and I was at the store, and this cover just grabbed my eye, and oh, I gotta find out about this. And so, you read it and loved it, and uh, yeah, and I didn't keep that original copy. So years later, when I wanted to read it again, I had to, buy another one because it was never reprinted, and I don't even know if it's been ever been put on digital.
No, it's not. It's not. I looked. It is, but not in a reputable. One of those
No,
dodgy places.
yeah,
One of those dodgy
not
places.
legally. Okay.
Not legally. But I wouldn't know about those sites at all. No.
Oh
All right,
yeah.
Kirby. Kirby, what about you? Because you're a whole generation behind us, and this is as I've said to Kirby a bunch, he's got a Bronze Age soul.
Yeah,
Um,
well, yeah. So I first read this for the first time last year when I was 33.
really? Was it just last year?
Yeah, it was just the last year because like I had heard about it, and I saw it on it was a part of a package with a whole bunch of some other comics that I wanted, and it's like, oh, okay, Showcase 100. I am familiar through years of me listening to your all's generation talk about it, so I'm like, oh, I was happy to pick it up, and then like a week later, there was a to be continued comics over in Maryland. They were having a quarter bin sale, and I found a even better copy for a quarter. So I'm like, well, hey, I'll ask Ross if he needs a copy of this, just because I figured he'd probably want it. So,
But it's
uh,
only a quarter. That's sad. That makes my heart hurt.
oh, if I told you all some of the stuff I have bought for a quarter at some of their sale, like I have a literal long box filled of like 90s Superman that is just currently unread right now that I got for like less than $75.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, uh, I have thousands of comics, and the only way I've been able to acquire thousands is by making extensive use of going out of business sales and quarter bins and things like that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and I mean, we could do a whole episode of like what's Kirby hunting for, and so much of that is going to be
Yeah.
quarter band sale stuff, and
It's
they
kind of
would
sad
be,
that that those errors are kind of under, I'd like the fact you can get them cheap, but you know, it's kind of sad that this isn't a little more valuable because it does have something. It is, I think, a very important comic. So Kirby, what did you take on it when you first read it? Did you like? I mean, did you?
oh yeah, no, I really liked it. Joe Staten, I think, is probably one of the top three choices of who I would have trusted with this in 1978 terms. The others being like Perez, obviously, and maybe Dick Dillon, but
Mhm.
yeah, and then with that, it's Paul Kupperberg, who I like, and Paul Levitt, who I really like. And I think it was just kind of like there was a bunch of like, what the actual heck is going on here? We don't know really how to incorporate all these characters, so we're just gonna throw them in. And like, there's a whole bunch of don't worry about it, just read and enjoy. And
Mhm.
that's what I did.
Yeah, it does have some of that one and done comic logic where you have to finish it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and the big event kind of cast of characters. What I've thought about is like, we have all these big crisis events in the future that do a lot of the tricks that this does, but this does it in what is it?
30 odd pages
30
compared.
pages. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the things, as I mentioned, I was only 9 when I first read this. So to me, it was obviously my first event, but it was also, it kind of shaped, what I was liking in comics for years to come. I got to appreciate, the mass gathering of characters and the time distortions and all that. And it helped that I was so new to comics when I read this because I didn't come into it with a lot of the preconceptions that a lot of fanboys have, like, oh, this character's not acting the way they're supposed to. Because I didn't know
Yeah.
any of them. I didn't know how they're supposed to be.
Yeah. That's, for me, it was like I knew who all the superhero ones, the Justice Leagues, their
Mhm.
periphery, Titans, because God, was that Tony Rozakis era? That was before this or around this.
Yeah,
I
because
think it was the Bob Rosakis just at the tail end of it.
Yeah, yeah, and I had I know how rough that run is, but that was like my first Teen Titans, except for maybe the Christmas issue and
Mm.
some of the Zany Haney stuff, the one single issues my brother had.
man,
Um, but I knew who most of the characters were, and I kind of was interested in the other one. And my brother has holds most of the Silver Age in his head still, and he'll be 70 next month. Uh, but it's still in there. But he would tell me like Fire Hair. Like I went, did you have that? He goes, yeah, I had it. He had it, or I read it. I'd be like, I mean, it's the kid only made 3 appearances. Um, but he knew all the sci-fi ones because he was a big, um, he big Adam Strange and the sci-fi stuff and the Western stuff like I knew who
Oh
Batlash
yeah,
was.
Batlash.
Yeah. And I did know who the Inferior Five were because we had a few of those. Um,
Yeah,
so
those are ones I only knew by sight. I knew nothing about them.
they're an Angel and the Ape. I think I'd read an Angel and the Ape at this point, probably.
I've
I
read
knew who
three.
Sugar and Spice were. Sugar and Spike. I keep doing that. But that was about it. But I liked it. I mean, I've been reading Justice League. I'm trying to think what the first Justice League I read would have been. Oh, it was a 100. Like 100 of Justice League is the first one I
That's a good
positively
one to
remember
start.
reading. Yeah, there was this road trip, and when we moved one year, and I think my memory is that's when I had my first Avenger, my first Legion appearance, and my first Justice League I had read. But I'm not, it was 72. I was very little, and my brother was just trying to shut me up by handing me comic books. But I like this. This is also the late 70s. I think DC's doing good in the late 70s. I think there's some really good stuff coming out. Joe Staten's he's come over from what Charlton at
Uh,
that point.
yeah, Charlton. Like he hasn't even started his Legion run yet. It's gonna be like in the next month or two when that starts, and then eventually he'll take over on Green
Had he done
Lantern.
his Justice Society? He'd done his Justice Society by then, right? Yeah.
I think he was in the middle of
Yes,
it.
In the
yeah,
middle of it,
yeah.
yeah. Because the origin is that Justice League origin, Justice Society origin, he does it 79,
I
1979.
think the origin is 77.
Is it 77? Okay.
Yeah.
So that probably made me like it because that super special or superstar, what that was in, that comic was dog-eared because that sucker got read and read and read. And I'm a big fan of his art, especially I knew him but this isn't where first time I ever saw him is when he was inking Sal in Avengers.
Oh, huh.
Yeah. The
Wow,
the
yeah.
Crystal, the Avengers part of the during Englehart. Because Swordsman
Oh,
and Mantis are in it.
I'm gonna have to go back and check that out.
It's the FF that married the wedding two-parter. The Avengers part
Okay.
is Sal
Okay.
pencils, Joe Satan inks.
I did read those years ago, but I didn't catch that Joe Staten was working on it.
Yeah, I was an inker nerd. Kirby hears me talk about inkers all the time, but I have a fixation on it. I can remember certain inkers more than I sometimes know the penciler because I'm a fan of. I miss that in modern comics
Hmm.
where your art looks one way for one character because you have a different inking partner, and and some of the unsung heroes like Larry Malstat, and I think Staten was a great inker. He worked real well with Sal. I mean, it looked like Sal, but it just had a little more life. So let's talk about the cover, and then we'll get into talk about the story. Unless you had any other things you want to do before we dive in.
No, no, no.
Hmm.
Yeah, because we already kind of covered. Like, I was gonna make the crack if this would be a 12 issue miniseries nowadays, but
Oh, at least,
that's
yeah.
No, it'd be in the. Come on, don't understate it. It'd be a $1,500 1,500 page omnibus.
Yeah, yeah. It would be.
It would be.
All
I
right.
don't mind a big event. I don't mind an event, but they're a crapshoot.
yeah.
It's like throwing the dice nowadays. But this is kind of the model for it in a lot of ways. But let's start with this cover. This is a great cover. I think
Mm.
this is I have not bashed, but I'm not the biggest fan of Dick Giordano's inks on certain people at certain times. I think it's not, I like him a lot on certain people like Garcia Lopez and Adams and stuff like that. But other artists, he's very precise. It's very straightforward. His art reminds me of like Mark Trail when he's a penciler. It's that kind of realistic, kind of cartoony, accurate, and I think sometimes he doesn't blend well. But I liked him with Joe on this one because you get it just I don't want to say tidies it up, but just makes it look a little sharper. and I think he does some corrections on some faces. Um, because I feel like Flash face looks more like his pencils than it
Yeah,
does
yeah.
Joe. Lois's face is a little like that.
Yeah, one of the ways I can always tell when Giordano has inked something is
Mm.
by the faces. You know, you can't I can't really tell from the backgrounds or anything else, but almost all of his smiles on his characters are very distinct. I can usually
Thank you.
tell.
That's yeah. Now you say it, that's what's making me think that.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's also he was an editor, right? He's an editor at this point, isn't he? Is he edited?
Um,
No, not yet. Not yet. Maybe that's later. I know he did some editing and he was
yeah, I'm
artistic
not
director.
sure what point he started editing,
Yeah,
but
and he was artistic director or something. Like
something like
yeah,
that.
he had a title and he did a lot of stuff. And he was good. I mean, he was good at it. But I think there was that thing with the house style, like, Kirby could Jack Kirby's Superman face had to be changed
Yeah.
because
Which
it didn't fit the house style. They had certain rules. And I think the Flash is a little like that. It looks a little like more like who was doing it? Who was
uh,
doing Flash then? Don
was it
Heck?
Irv Novak at this
It was Irv
point?
Novak. Yeah, it'd be Irv. It'd be Irv, yeah.
Yeah.
And Lois looks a little more like,
Kurt Schaffenberger?
yeah, it does. I hadn't thought that. I was thinking, um, yeah, it's not Swan.
No.
Yeah, so that'd be a good guess. I love I love his Hal Jordan on this, flying over the 100. I love because of Joe, because he's gonna go on and be
Oh,
a
for
great Green Lantern artist,
oh,
I think.
honestly,
Yeah.
probably top 3, 4 for me. Yeah.
Yeah, I
'Cause- And
think
he does
people,
it for years.
yeah, well, he created some of the best character. I mean, Kilowog is him, isn't it?
Yeah, Kilowog's
Yep.
him.
Kilowog's him.
Salak, I think is him.
Solid. Oh yeah,
I think
yeah.
so, yeah.
Chip,
Yeah. Chip.
is Chip him?
I'm gonna
Chip may be
guess
her. Chip
yes.
may not have had a name, but I think he may be before Joe. But it's great, and it has all these great characters. Because I remember as a kid going through them and trying to figure out which ones were which. In the background. Um, but I like
Yeah,
it. Mhm.
the fascinating thing to me about this cover is like who is in the forefront, who gets in the back. Because like, okay, Hal, Barry, and Aquaman. All right, 3 Justice Leaguers. So they're all in the front. Lois Lane in the front makes sense. But like, what's it? Space Ranger, I think has way more space or takes a more cover space than like I don't know the Adam Strange or the Metal Men, who I would say were probably more successful.
Well,
Yeah,
yeah, I mean, Metal Man had their own book in the 70s. So you definitely would think they would be more prominent than Space Ranger, who one, I don't think he ever had his own title, and two, he didn't even have a regular strip in like over a decade.
and it wasn't long. I think he's had more appearances in future crisis or crossover things that have time travel in it. Or if someone's doing a time travel story and they want to be kind of kitschy, you land in that late 20th, early 21st century. Or no, he's from 22nd. Him and Tommy Tomorrow are both from the 22nd century. So that was, pit stop. But I think he's on the cover here because he's so prominent in this story. He's got a bigger role than some others. He ends up with Hal and his team, him and his sidekick Cyril.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, one of the nice things about the cover and the placement of Green Lantern and Space Ranger is this would directly tie into Crisis on Infinite Earths because Marv Wolfman said he got the idea for Crisis when people were complaining that he forgot or didn't ever know that Space Ranger and Green Lantern had ever met. And then they pointed out to him because he wrote in 80, 81, Wolfman wrote a story in which the two met for the first time. And then people pointed out that, they'd met before. And of course, it was the same artist, Joe Staton, penciled both of the books. And I mean, and here they are prominent on the cover together. Um, yeah, that and the whole thing, the whole crisis, you can blame on this cover.
Okay. Well, time, there's a lot of time travel. It resets, I guess. But I mean, this is an iconic cover. I'm surprised. I wondered, I mean, I'd like because Joe Stanton did that print of his Justice Society splash page, the origin splash page. Which if I ever go to a show, he's there. I hope he's selling it because I will buy one and frame it and hang it up because I think it's amazing. But this would be one I'd like a print of. It's neat. My only thing is I'm a huge, not a huge fan. I like the 70s run of Challengers. It was the only thing I had seen, and my brother handed it to me, and it's when Swamp Thing and Deadman kind of become part of the team, and Keith Giffen is doing the art. And I do when they pop up later in the issue in that uniform with the yellow stripe with the hourglass on the side, that is still my favorite Challengers costume.
Oh yeah,
it's so much better than their traditional one's great, and the one they just use is great, but the yellow ones with the red wings, sleeveless thing, like they stole Space Ranger's costume and just cut the sleeves off of it. But to see them in the back climbing, I liked it. And I was a Titans, and I was a little fan as a kid, and I was a little always kind of like, why aren't they more prominent? Not realizing that their book wasn't as popular as I thought it should be, even back then. All right. Let's just go to the story. So let's start with the splash page. I love this. I want to say one thing I love about the interior book is that Joe's inking it himself.
Oh yeah.
I'm not sure why he didn't do that more often. I mean, I know it was difficult with the deadlines they had, but I love this. What do you guys think of this splash page?
I like the character that he kind of gives a lot of people. Like the metal men are all kind of saying their own unique way. And yeah, you got a lot of hands on hips, but it's not everybody. And there's just kind of a more weight to a lot of the characters. And I think again that goes back to he's inking himself.
Yeah.
One of the things I appreciate is I don't think most of these characters had ever actually been shown before on the JLA satellite. Obviously, the JLA members had been there, and I think Adam Strange, but I'm not sure if any of the others had ever been shown there before. It was like, what would prompt, say Flash or Green Lantern to say, we need to bring the Metal Men up here.
Yeah. I don't
Yeah,
think
no.
well, and I think if any of them, I think you're right. I think Robin may be the only one.
Yeah, because
I don't think the other in this era, Wally wasn't prominent in the Flash books. I don't think he popped up that much.
no, and like even Lois, I don't think has ever really was ever really on the satellite, at least to my
Yeah,
knowledge.
but that's not Lois. That's not Lois, is it? That's Bonnie. That's the brunette.
Oh, from Rip Hunter's team.
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
that's Corky's sister. And I have one question for her. Why didn't you kill Corky at some point, please? Because every iteration of that kid is annoying.
Well, in Jeff Johns' Golden Age one shot a couple of years ago, wasn't Corky like the ultimate villain of the book or something like that?
Yeah.
He was in a net, but he messed up it's not intentionally, but somehow he becomes the bad guy in the future, and it's a timey-wimey thing. Yeah, because it ends up at the end of the Lost Children. He's just but no, it's oh God, no, because Tom King in the team up with Flash, where Bruce meets the alternate Batman, the Flashpoint Batman, his father, and Corky harasses Batman about having the snow globe, which is going to allow him to go mess with time because Corky knows what and it was just this weird conversation with Batman being talked down to by Corky. It's like, Batman, just hit him with something. He's annoying. But I like that Rip was in there because when I did my homework on Rip, prior to a lot of Rip Hunters, that the mythos that I understand is all Crisis on Infinite Earths on. It's he didn't have that big an impact or did other outside of his own book. And this one, not that many appearances. I think he's
I mostly know him from like 52 and the Booster Gold series where he was like retconned to be Booster's son.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember in the Linear Man,
Oh yeah,
yeah,
the Wave Rider and the Linear Man and
yeah,
all that.
man, Armageddon 20, what was it, 2000?
2001.
2001. Yeah,
I
in
do,
the far distant future of 2001.
yeah,
Oh, where they really made him Cable.
yeah,
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 yeah.
they did. I do want that collected sometime because I did like that annual. I did like that crossover.
It was good right up till the ending.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that poor the extant who is going to be Monarch was, yeah. Who was it supposed to be originally?
Captain
Captain
Adam.
Adam.
It's so
And
much better if it's Adam.
yeah, because it makes, especially if you go through the ongoing of that time, it's like, yeah, you don't want it to be because he's gone through so much crap, but it makes sense, especially if you read Justice League Europe Annual. It's literally supposed, you can tell it's like this is supposed who it's supposed to be.
Well,
And
yeah, I mean, the analogy I like to use is you got a birthday coming up. Someone asks you, "What do you want for your birthday?" You tell them, they get it for you. There's no surprise, but you got exactly what you wanted. As opposed to them, gift wrapping a special surprise and you open it and you're like, what the hell's this?
The knockoff toy. It's like
Yeah,
yeah,
you ask for the Superman action figure and then you get the, some third rate knockoff. It's like,
Super
where did you
Joe.
Super Joe?
That happened to
Um,
me, by the way.
oh God. Oh no, no, no. I'm so glad my mother believed that trained us all that Santa used the Sears catalog. Here, circle what you want Santa to get you. And I had a good dad who was like, I've told the stories a bunch, but one Christmas, my present was under a sheet. I was like, why? And he pulled it up and it was the big G.I. Joe mobile command center for the 12-inch figures. And there was a Batman figure, an Aquaman Mego, a Robin Mego. And he'd gotten them all out of the box, had them in the thing, and had it set up for me. This is a guy who probably never had many, his toys were, a baseball and a bat. He grew up in Brooklyn. And they were pretty poor. He was born like 2 weeks before the stock market crash. So I appreciated it. But yeah, but it was like I didn't get the knockoff stuff. Also, I had an older brother who was that is not a real superhero. Do not get him that toy. Because he had been being 10 years older. But I do me for this cover, what I like is there are just certain things. I really like how he tries to capture the creator's look on some of the characters, specifically Hawk and Dove. That Dove looks very Ditko-esque. Dove had a little, I just know that reminded me very much of those early Hawk and Dove comics.
he's got an early Peter Parker build to him, definitely.
Yeah, he does. That weird look on his face. Um, and like there was someone else on this one. Yeah, I can't remember. Oh, now I'm blanking. But I thought
Keep talking. I left my copy in the other room and I grab it.
uh, all right. Um, I miss the satellite. That's kind of what I wanted to talk about. Is I miss the satellite. I always thought I don't like the Watchtower, the modern version, the making it that Uber satellite. I just it is still my favorite headquarters.
Yeah, I mean, just when it, I mean, last night I was reading some random Justice Leagues, and it's like, oh, I enjoy a good schematic of the Watchtower, and it's like, doesn't it seems like an awful lot of space for at most what 12 people, but there is just something where it's like, this is better than Mount Justice. It's better than the Hall of Justice. I'll take fire for that one.
No, no, I
Yeah.
just feel like they're living inside some toy because
Yeah.
that version of the Hall of Justice is real. And you know, I'm one of those kids that I had the Filmation
Hmm.
superhero cartoons and then Super Friends. I find both of them a little hard to rewatch, even with nostalgia in your heart, because they weren't very, do they hold up? I mean, I would give them to a 6-year-old or a 7-year-old to watch because they're safe and
Yeah.
yeah, but I do love the satellite. I always did, and I do like it when they reference it back. Also, that's a great era. It's a great still this is a good era of Justice League lineup wise, I think.
Yeah, cause okay, wait. Oh yeah, so yeah, I'm at like this point in like the mid late 70s where it's I'm about to read one of the big team ups, but yeah.
Yeah. So let's move on to the double page spread on pages 2 and 3, and they start to shoehorn the characters that have appeared. So you've got the the panels where it's showing you Earth and all the time thing, the satellite, and then them watching the monitor where the Earth is being dragged out of orbit. So the Western character, that's Johnny Double.
Johnny Thunder.
Johnny Thunder. He's one of the Johnny Thunders. Okay. We got Anthro and his buddy, Sergeant Rock, Enemy Ace, and Fireman Farrell.
I find it so interesting that they gave Sergeant Rock a showcase appearance just because like I always figured he was just a perennial in like our army at war and stuff like that.
Um, well, the history showcase, it becomes a tryout magazine. Isn't that kind of why they did it?
Yeah, like the first 40 or so issues, characters would have multiple issues, but later on, they kind of went to like one issue each, and Sergeant Rock was one of those.
Yeah.
And I mean, not all of the characters debuted in Showcase. I mean, Aquaman had been around for like 20 years by the time he got a Showcase issue.
Yeah. Because I didn't realize that Creeper is the first. He was,
Yeah.
Yeah.
but the Titans, it's definitely that Titans an early Titans appearance. It's like they're trying it again,
Hmm.
because it appeared in Brave and Bold and then this. So this is after it'd been canceled. The original run's been canceled, isn't it?
So yeah, I think it was like just a month or two after it had been canceled. I think it was like this was like early 78 and it ended late 77. Titans
And then the
ended,
Rosaka stuff is 70.
yeah, like 76, 77, I
So
think.
yeah, so this is they're trying again to kind of
Yeah.
get it. It's not until Marv and George come and they don't really reinvent it. It's just they write it better.
Yeah.
And, and they had some new characters. But I like this too. I like it. It's got the gravitas of what they're trying to tell you, and that very Bronze Age thing that the Earth could move out of orbit.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and again, reading this at such a young age, this was the first time I had ever heard of this concept. Now, I've since learned that it's an old, sci-fi cliche, but yeah, it was new to me. So,
Oh, I thought it was cool. I don't think I had when we get to the later one where Spectre gets involved with the planet movement stuff that I don't think I'd read those JLA
yeah,
JSA team up from that.
again, first time I'd ever seen the Spectre push a planet.
Yeah. But I like it. And we're gonna get again, like you guys said, these first 3 pages would have taken 2 issues in a modern comic.
Oh,
And
everyone's got to team up. First, we got to collect everybody. Then we have to have an issue of everyone standing around as someone explains.
Well,
yeah.
in the first issue of Crisis, you may recall that the extra long first issue of Crisis was called The Gathering because they took an entire issue just to gather the characters on the satellite, literally.
Yeah. Oh, it's so true. I mean, I love this. But I do like we get to see them. I miss exposition, and sometimes in modern comics, sometimes it's annoying, but this is not bad. I think Joe and Paul do a good job, making the story flow well. I don't feel like they're over talking, explaining what we're seeing. They're just kind of bringing you up to speed. So when Rip Hunter goes, "Hey, I'm known as this," it's because probably 75% of the readers of this comic when it came out had not read may not have read a Rip Hunter comic.
Well, what interested me about that when Rip was introducing himself, it's like, yeah, when did any of these people ever hear of Rip Hunter and to invite him onto the satellite?
Yeah, because I don't think he'd been in a Brave and Bold. It probably had DC Comics Presents and
Nope. Well,
hadn't started yet, right?
yeah,
No,
it's either
yeah.
no, because that starts
So,
in 78.
yeah, so it's like a couple months after this.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, but I like I like a good bit of exposition. Sometimes I think this one works really well because then you transition to page 5 and they also give you these big giant pages and panels. And I love that page where it's Adam Strange, Green Lantern, Flash, and Atom flying off into space. The
Yeah,
making Hal build a machine that's a little more complex for his little brain.
yeah. Well, I like I mean, I love this image. One of the things that always kind of disappointed me is that DC didn't do enough with their spacefaring characters in space. I mean, eventually they did more with it, but it's just nice to see, like Hal and Adam Strange in their natural element, outer space. Now it's a little weird to see Flash and Atom in outer space.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And for the 3 issues of Showcase following this, you do get a little more of that where it's a Hawkman Adam Strange team up in outer space, and it's a really good 3-parter. So,
yeah. I'd forgotten that when I was looking at all the covers, kind of figuring out who came when and how the book changed over time. Because this is issue 100 and has everybody, but it doesn't have everybody who had appeared up to 100 because it doesn't have Doom Patrol or Power Girl. It's
right,
only
because
from the original run.
it doesn't have Dr. Fate or
Or Hourman,
Hourman.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it doesn't. I forgot that it didn't have
Well,
that.
and there was a comedy singing group that appeared in a couple issue of Showcase called the Maniacs,
Oh yeah.
and they weren't in here. And this is one of my favorite bits of trivia is in one of the Showcase issues that featured the Maniacs on the cover was had a so within this guest appearance of the Maniacs and Showcase, they had a guest appearance by actor Woody Allen. Um, so yeah, I mean, you can look up through the Showcase covers, and Woody Allen appeared on a cover of Showcase. But is Woody Allen in this issue? No.
No. This Woody Allen before he's super famous Woody Allen.
Yeah. This was before he started directing movies. Back when he was
Okay.
known mostly for his like stand-up comedy and
And
books and
it,
stuff.
Yeah.
yeah, and he's part of that. There's if you ever see a lineup of the people that wrote our show of shows, the
Yeah.
Sid Caesar show, and you're going, oh, Mel Brooks, Larry Gelbart, Woody Allen. It's like everybody who was funny for about 50 years. Mel Brooks, Carl Reiner, all of them. But I
Also,
didn't know he had appeared in that. That's odd. Go
sorry.
ahead.
I was going to say also, there's no James Bond. James Bond was in the Showcase. They did
Right.
Doctor No. And DC, bad do you screw up? You have James Bond in the 60s. You have that license and you sit on it.
Oh my
That is
God.
bizarre how they can do it one issue of of James Bond, and that's it. That's like the only James Bond comic for like 2 decades.
Yeah, you know what gets me is I don't really understand how they tracked what was popular. I know a lot of it came from letters, fans writing in and saying they liked it. If they got a lot of letters, they'd do another issue because um, it wasn't until later the direct market or even when comic shops started open that where you had companies that distribute them that were counting it, like Diamond and stuff like that. And now they don't count it again. There are no publication numbers really that are official. There's no outside person counting it. It's you just have to believe what Penguin House, and the other two distributors.
Yeah,
My comic shop guy was telling me about it. So, how did they find out if a character was popular?
yeah. It was short-term sales, maybe feedback from the retailers, and of course letters from the fans. Um, the letters from the fans, from what I understand, were misleading because while the superhero fans were the most passionate of all the comic book fans, but prior to certainly the 70s, the superhero fans were still a minority of comic book readers because otherwise you wouldn't have had all the war books and romance and westerns and spy books and things like that.
Yeah. Um, Which those were as good. Those, I mean, yeah, because when does it really just dilute to superheroes? When is that? There is this is like because DC
Well,
did war comics into the 80s.
yeah, I think the superheroes kind of took over basically as the comic market was shrinking in the 70s. The superhero fans were the ones that clung on to comics
Yeah,
the
okay.
most, and so that's they were the ones who were still passionately buying the comics. So that's what the publishers, Marvel and DC, anyways, catered to.
Yeah, I don't, that's sad. Because I think so. I kind of view from my little bubble because I go to the shop I go to and the most of my online things. Um, there is back to a wide variety, I think, when it comes to comic as an art form. You may not get it from a comic shop, but there are other places to get it.
Oh,
Yeah,
sure.
like my goddaughter there, she's big on the web comics, the ones that are designed for the web. And I get it. And how manga is influencing the artists way more than it did when it before, and it's more because that's what they grew up on. They're emulating the people they read.
Right.
But back to showcase. I will not start any more tangents. Probably. But I like to see. I like it when we get to pages 6 and 7 in space. It's like you were saying, Ted, about seeing them in action in space, and also. I don't remember a time where Hal had to work in unison with another person to build one of his imaginary devices with his ring. But it makes sense. He's not an engineer. Well, he'd be a pilot. He'd have some engineering degree. Fighter pilots tend to have a degree in some form of engineering or some be smart with math.
Yeah,
Um,
it's if you want this construct to operate on scientific principles, well, then you need a scientist
yeah,
to help build it.
yeah. But I liked it. I thought that was a cool trick. And
That
uh,
spaceship, you understand why Staten would go on to draw Legion and Green Lantern on page
yeah, he can.
7.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. See, that's it. He could draw any environment. I think. I like the little on page 7, the little science lecture about your eye going through, the
The
spect.
Doppler effect.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was like, okay, DC. It's like the old ones if you're reading one in the 50s where it's got the 1 page or half-page science comic strip.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But I do like a Staten spaceship and the
Yeah, and
silly and the yellow weakness that it's barely yellow.
but just enough to give Green Lantern a challenge.
Yes.
Yep.
I love the robots that they don't have legs. I mean, which they wouldn't need them in space, but
Yeah.
Right.
I just thought that was a clever thing to throw out there.
Yeah. I mean, uh, Staten's good with well, you can see why he would end up drawing Green Lantern. They're looking back well, let's have Joe do it because he's done it and it looks great. And he has a good imagination to his space stuff and his aliens and his all of it. It's great.
He was drawing Metalman at this point, like, or
Oh,
maybe it had just ended. So that's why, he's real good with their shape shifting on the next page and all of
yeah.
that.
I remember that because that's some of my first memories of Metal Men is this stuff and not the Ross Andrews stuff.
Yeah. And, just go back to when we talked DC Presents 4 for, why I love them. So,
Yeah. Oh, and he draws them so well. I
oh,
mean, his art style really caters to their needs as characters. Um, and I do like we get to see Anthro and um his friend. I can't remember his friend's name. It's on my sheet. Hold on a second. But I like how they're in there and Rip and the Time Hunters in their time sphere. When they said it in the first time, he's like, "How did they get a time Legion time sphere?" It's, oh, theirs is around 2.
I thought the exact same thing. It's like, that, yeah.
Well, you can
Um,
tell he has an old-fashioned time sphere, because unlike the Legion's time sphere, his is not transparent.
oh, yeah.
It looks more like a submarine sphere than a than a Legion time sphere.
With its
Yeah.
transparent aluminum.
Yeah, yeah.
And there's a little fuzzy brown thing floating outside. I don't know if that's an explosion or a tribble. So
those time stream tribbles will get you every time.
What here's something I really like. There's an ad for Showcase 100 inside Showcase 100.
Yep.
I love that. It's like we're gonna have that. It's just it's just past the gate. Is it just past the gate fault, the staple falls?
Not yet.
No, not yet, not yet. Okay. But I like how they have the old ones on the side, and it is a nice. I miss house ads in a way. I miss good ones. I don't know, but there are less ads in this. We get to page 9, and we get to see Lois
at WGBS, and
Yeah.
you know, I like that they specify, like, yeah, Lois was never really one of the on-air reporters. She was, you know, she was still Daily Planet at this point, and like straight up, Crisis pretty much ripped off the Red Sky, Red Lightning thing going on.
Oh yeah.
Well, what I find interesting about this is Lois says, "Superman, where are you?" They could, I mean, even though the Justice League had already explained where he was, but that was in a different scene. But what Lois doesn't say, what the page doesn't say, is, "Where's Clark Kent?" You know, shouldn't he be the one on the news?
Yeah. So there are only 4 Justice Leaguers involved, in 3 Justice Leaguers and Adam Strange leading this mission. Where are the other 12 or 13? What are they doing? Where are they off on some mission that we don't know about? I mean, this is in the era of continuity, but this one you can't plug it in, I don't think. You know, I
Yeah,
think
well,
they don't care. Either of the 2 Pauls care. Their job is to celebrate this comic and put everybody who had been in its original run in some way or another.
and they didn't have time. I'm sure they weren't given months to plot out and think out all the details. They were told, "Oh, but by the way, we need this thing by Tuesday or whatever."
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, and that's I like deadlines sometimes for artists. I did theater for a long time, and sometimes, I did set designs, and sometimes it's like, why did you choose that? It's because that's all the paint I had left over, and that's all the I only had a 29 by 20 foot rectangular space to put everything. So yes, serendipity, the what comes to you in the moment, and I think that. Because I think some of this plot I don't know how planned out the ending was and the use of characters was, but I've forgotten how much I like the ending. And part of that is because of Lois, and when we get to Angel. I like Lois in this. I don't always like Silver Age and Bronze Age Lois. Sometimes the way females are portrayed, they don't really kind of hold up. It could, and they're very plot devicey at times, but I like her in this, and I like this whole segment with her at WGBS.
Yeah, this is closer to like a post-burn, like Lois, more than anything.
Yeah, a little Margot Wait a minute. No,
This would have been. It might have
this,
been out at this point, or you're about
well,
to come out. I don't know when.
Okay, Showcase 100. I've got Mike's Amazing World up on another monitor. It says it was released in February of 78, but Superman the movie didn't come out until like November of 78, I think.
Oh, wow.
Okay, so this is before it.
Yeah, and I have read some of the Lois Lane stories, both in her own issue and then after it merged with Superman Family, and they did do a much better attempt in the Bronze Age to make her as just an independent character who's trying to do her job as a reporter well, as opposed to the focus of her life, trying to trick Superman into marrying her.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, that's it. It's I wish I had more of that Superman era in my head, because I don't think I read a lot of it, because when I was a kid, I wanted the teen books, and it was later I didn't really read solo books that often until later. But I like her in this. I think Joe draws her really well. She's very distinct. It took me a minute at the bottom of page 9 to realize that was Jack Ryder, the Creeper.
Yeah.
Yep.
I should have known by the Ditko hat. That is a Ditko hat.
Yeah.
Or Don Heck. You could also say it's a Don Heck hat. Don Heck like that hat style. to see someone smoking in a comic book is so odd. Not
Yeah,
just
yeah.
chewing on a cigar, just smoking a secondhand smoke. Um, and
But
then
when we come to deadlines, it's the challenge of the unknown. Just somehow knowing it's going to be this floor at WGPS where we need to get into the plot.
And the window's open.
yeah, what I don't understand. I work on the 15th floor of a building, and there is no way they would let us have windows that open. You know,
Yeah, no, it's
it would be bad in COVID because we are all kind of. I work in healthcare. My brain was muddled. Um, but I do. But I want to say something. There is an energy to Joe Staten action movement that I like. Their way they're entering is just very dramatic,
yes.
very posed. But I do love those costumes, and I do like how Prof he's got a little bit of a comb over and it's not holding up very well.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, Joe, you understand that some of us are follically challenged.
Yeah.
And some
And,
of us just don't lean into it. It's just
and it's not a one-off. If you look at the different panels, they did Joe consistently draws Prof with the receding hairline and the
that
bad comb over.
yeah, it may be parted to different side from panel to panel.
Yeah, I noticed that.
Yeah, it's like, dude, just is that a honey bun cover where you got like one strand and you're just kind of winding around spraying it down? But I like how I like this era. I love those costumes. I really do. I think it's an underrated era. I saw someone bad mouthing it recently on was on Reddit about some Challenger. They were talking about collect Challenger collections and said, no, I don't ever want the stuff with Giffen in that with Swamp Thing and
Wrong.
Dead Man. I'm like, oh, you're wrong, dude. You're thinking that good Jerry Conway comic books. But I do like this era and I do like them. And they have a big part in, as I reread this, I like that, hey, they have a larger part in this story, as do Lois and some of the characters that, an average comic reader like me at 13 wouldn't know who they were really. I mean, I did because I read some, but not a lot. And I like the pairings, Lois going with them, you know, and just jumping in, and then the creeper hanging on.
Yeah, he leapt from the roof to the chopper, and it's amazing that he didn't get caught in the blades.
Yeah. Oh, what? Something happened to our blades. What's all that on our windshield? Ooh,
Oh,
dead creeper. Um,
the lightning got him. That's it.
um, but I do like this. The nice pairing, and the art is so good.
I kind of wish, like, Joe Staten on Flash. I do kind of like the expressions he gives a lot of the characters, and it's like, yeah, I would have liked to have seen. I think for as much as we've praised him, it's like I don't know if he gets the recognition nowadays he probably deserves.
No, I don't think he does. I think people find him a little too cartoony, is the term I hear. My buddy Ken is like, but he likes him sometimes. But I joked at him. He said he didn't really care if he was showed him a Joe Samcom. He didn't care for it. I said, but you like Eric Larson, and they are not far apart.
No, they're both definitely of the same, school. They're not the hyper realistic type or the super dramatic and dramatic in terms of the like draining all of the humor out of a scene. They while they do have action and pathos to some of their drawings when it's needed, but they're not afraid to make something like, hey, we're having this big goofy space battle and it looks like a big goofy space battle.
Yeah, and that's it. I think I've always think of Joe in the way I think about Sal at Marvel. You know, he could do the superhero stuff, but he had a lighter touch. He was his faces, like Kirby pointed out, everybody emote. I can see what's behind their eyes. Because like in modern comics, we don't do thought bubbles. And I miss thought bubbles because I'd like to know what the person's thinking when there's no one for him to have a conversation with. Instead of
Yeah.
just having him have a conversation, oh, we're just going to show you. But that doesn't tell me what they're thinking. because they're all grimacing because they're going into battle. But Joe does it like Prof looks concerned. Rocky looks, he looks gruff. They all look, you can tell what they're thinking in it. I
Yeah,
think he does
yeah.
a really good face. He does it. And I like his panel layouts. A lot of these letterbox long rectangular ones across the page, or the less squared ones, less just big, small scale squares. It just looks so good. And and having to show us for make sure the fans could see that Jack and Creeper were the same person by having the image on the bottom of
Yeah, that was a
11. It's
good
like,
touch.
yeah, I do like that. So now we get back to the space battle. And a treasury ad. I don't normally do from floppies, Ted. I have so few floppies, so I'm being Kirby has the luxury of sometimes he can see that I love these house ads. And
And
all the treasuries.
and I just want to do a quick brag. About 5 years ago, I got that Superman versus Wonder Woman and original trade treasury for $1 at a dollar sale.
Was it in good
Oh,
shape
Yeah,
or was it
well,
loved?
pretty good. I mean, someone had written on it in pencil, but for $1, what do you expect?
yeah, no, that's
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I had that one too, Kirby, the Superboy Legion one, but that one I had to pay, like 20 or bucks or more for.
that's about what I paid for that one. And I don't remember what I paid for this one with the Jim Shooter. Well, I know I paid for the Jim Shooter signature, but I don't remember what I paid for for the issue itself.
Uh,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, me and Kirby were in line and I handed him Jim my copy of it that I have the original ones my brother bought when they came out new, and they are well read because I would lay on the floor and just, but we both I'm getting Joe's signature, and then, oh, I haven't signed one of these in a while, and then Kirby's like, yeah, we're going to sign two of them. So but he was very nice. But those, yeah, I love those treasuries. I bought the Gorell one, the one that's in the house ad when they put it out in that nice large size hardcover, because I also have it in, the one of the post. It's in one of the hard collections too, but I want a large version, and I really don't like pulling out my original ones because they're so beat up. I don't want them to fall apart completely. But I miss a good treasury. It's a good format. So what do y'all think of the space battle on page 12? Um,
George Lucas is gonna sue somebody.
what, for the droids or the
No, no, I was just saying like the big epic space battle, and it's like, no, no, you know what? If did Joe say it never draw a Star Wars comic? I would believe it.
so
well,
I Mhm.
I was gonna say it's interesting that while there is a battle in space, it's the heroes are fighting the robots. They're not actually fighting the ship. You notice that the alien ship doesn't. It's not actually like shooting at them or anything.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah,
And
yeah.
so when I was reading it this time, because a spaceship comes in it's like in Star Wars, a spaceship comes in and saves our heroes. But it's not the Millennium Falcon. I thought that was Hawkman's spaceship for a minute.
I did
I can
too. I'm
see
like,
that.
Yeah. I was like,
because I'm like,
Hawkman's not in this.
and it's like, dude, was he just braving the bold? Is that where he reappeared? Maybe.
Yeah. Um,
And there's a lot of like 50s, 60s designs that I really like. I'll be honest, Space Ranger's helmet, that's the one where I'm kind of going a little too goofy even for me.
yeah, it's kind of like, why do you have one piece of plastic bubble when you're in space, but you still have a plastic bubble over your head? Is that to protect your eyes or your head? You've got
Yeah,
these transparent aluminum helmet?
and he's supposed to be from the future, whereas you can see that Adam Strange just has the one bubble over his head.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
why in the future do you? But it, I guess the outer bubble is the one that helps him in space because when he's inside, you can see he just has like the half sphere, kind of like the bowl over transparent bowl over his head.
Yeah. I do like his, I mean, I do like, oh, who was his creator? Hold on, because I can imagine um
Space Ranger 101.
Space Ranger, is he Space Ranger created by Gardner Fry. This is the one, I've said it earlier, and I've just brain farted. Gardner Fry, Edmund Hamilton, and Bob Brown. I don't know if he did the design though, because sometimes the penciler of a first appearance always didn't do the design. You know, they may have had someone come to think, but I'm a Bob Brown fan. I'll have to go back and see if I to read some of the ones he did. I knew him more from Daredevil and Avengers, because he was like my second Avenger artist after when I started reading the book.
I first remember Bob Brown from his work on Superboy in the late 60s, early 70s.
Yeah, that I was reading those and I didn't realize how many of those are probably Bob Brown that I had seen and just didn't realize it was him. I'm going to get that Superboy DC Finest. I'm going to get those because there's some of those I've just never read. I know mostly 80s Kurt Schaffenberger Superboy, which is not, doesn't really rock my world, but because I never liked the kiddie comics, not kiddie comics. That's a bad thing to say. The more, made for more bigger audience, like all audience kind of thing where comics were tearing because as the fans got into it, like Roy and them, they started focus on less on little kids and more on, they saw their demographic aging and they moved with it instead of kind of DC did, I think, with having Superboy in some books like that to try to grab younger readers, but they all kind of move away from it, which is probably one reason I think the art form it is changing the way it is. But with a digital universe, drawn stories, visual stories are coming back. But I like this. I like him. I like Cyril, his cute little shape-shifting buddy. He is. I don't, it's silly, but it's very DC. Like you wouldn't, this is not a Marvel thing. It's a very DC thing. And I like how he's like, "Don't forget me. How could I? You're my friend Cyril." But it's a cute little cartoon introduction. I like it. And we get a little exposition of where he's from, but we get to see why Flash was brought in. He can vibrate his way in and open the door.
And then then we get cut to like, what was it, somewhere under the American Midwest, and we just get like our space ribbon of our, like, look, the who and the why of the villain in this issue is not important, and that's just gotta be known.
Yeah. The MacGuffin.
Yeah, it looks like a 80s Doctor Who villain where it's just a piece of tin foil superimposed and change color thing, or a Star Trek brain monster in one of those globes.
I do like when in any type of sci-fi setting when they do make an effort to have non-humanoid aliens, because that's one of the things that's always bugged me is the assumption that everyone in outer space is going to have 2 arms, 2 legs, 2 eyes, and 10 fingers, 10 toes. They're all going to be pink skinned and are earth skin colored.
Yeah. Back here they would all be pink. Probably
yeah,
the majority would be pink. And I like the joy of Joe saying when you get inside the ship, there is a giant evil potato.
Yeah. I thought it to me, I thought it looked more like a Jello salad, but yeah, it is described
been out in the sun.
Yeah.
What are those Minnesota salads? So I follow this lady. Otherwise, she pops up on my thing where she makes old like 1950 Midwestern Minnesota like dessert salads. I do gag a little bit when she says what's in them.
Yeah. I know what you're talking about, but I don't remember what they're called.
Oh yeah, but that's kind of what it looks like. My mom trying to do a Jello salad when we were kids and why are there grapes in that, Mom? Why are there grapes in that? But I like it. It's a Cyril turns into a giant horned bunny.
But
Um,
that's what
I
saves them. And you know what? I'll take it.
I've probably read this comic a dozen times in my life. I don't know if I've ever noticed the horns on the bunny before.
yeah, his antennas turn into
They're
horns, and he looks
no,
pretty
they're
evil.
there. I can see them, but it never clicked with me until now.
Yeah, and also for a second, what I'm reading it is like, is the magic coming from the disco ball on the roof? Because it does. It is. It's just where the energy's coming from, and they turn it off, and the monster turns off, and you get. I like it. I like this team up. I think Space. I don't know why they decided to give Space Ranger more cut, more play in
Yeah.
this, but I'm
Well,
kind of glad they did
yeah. I
because.
think that's a good metaphor for the late 70s. Science fiction kills the disco.
Oh, so now we're getting to one of my favorite pages and one of Paul Cooperberg's because in his little article about because yeah, I do know he loves this. It's one of his favorite comic. Everybody's at a O'Day and Simeon detective agency, and you've got Angel and the Ape, the Inferior Five, Batlash, Binky, Tommy Tomorrow, and oh, who are the two teenagers? That's not
Wendy and Willie.
Wendy and Willie. Okay. It
And
looks like Maynard. Is that their version of Dobie Gillis? They had the Dobie Gillis license.
yeah, well, what it was is DC did Dobie Gillis comics in the early 60s, and then someone had the bright idea of rebranding these old Dobie Gillis comics as Wendy and Willie. Only they changed the like the clothing styles. So they had to like redraw all of the clothing because, of course, by late 60s it was had to be mod and everything like that. But yeah, like reprinting old stories, but slapping different names on the characters and redrawing the clothing. I don't know that did it really save a lot of money? And of course, you know, none of us have ever heard of Wendy and Willie, so obviously it
They
didn't.
didn't. I only know Dobie Gillis because when I first tried to grow a beard, all I could grow was the chin beard, and I would
Mhm.
wear it. And my older brother, who was old enough to have seen Dobie Gillis, and went, "You look like Bob Denver in Dobie Gillis." I was like, "Crap!" Without the beard, I could like him in Gilligan. So, but yeah, so it did. That's what it made me think about it. They changed the hair colors, I bet too, because
Yeah.
Dobie Gillis was like a ginger or something.
I have
But I,
no idea who you're talking.
yeah, you wouldn't. It wouldn't.
Yeah.
It was just it was a teenage sitcom. Dobie Gillis is the life and times of Dobie Gillis, and the guy played um Gilligan played his beatnik best friend.
Okay,
Yeah.
like I at least know
And
Gilligan.
I don't know, Kirby, if you've ever heard like the term Maynard used as an insult.
If I have it, it's not. I
Yeah,
but maybe have, but
But
go
if
on.
you did, it derives from
I
Dobie
think
Gillis and the character of Bob Denver, Maynard.
Maynard G was it Maynard G Krebs?
Yeah, yeah,
Maynard
that's
Gotcha.
G.
it.
So my brothers would call me Maynard G Krebs, and they would say the whole thing
Yeah.
when I would come home with my little chin beard.
And the other only notable thing, really, of the Gillis TV show is that it was like the first prominent role of actor Warren Beatty.
Oh, he's right. He
Oh,
was the handsome high
wow.
school kid. Yes, he
Yeah,
was.
yeah, he was like the handsome, rich, preppy kid.
And the woman played Jane Hathaway was their school teacher.
Maybe I'm
Maybe,
not
maybe.
familiar with
I've
that, but
seen them. I've
she,
watched them in the middle of the night. It's one of those things where you have insomnia in Northern Virginia in the late 70s and 80s.
mm,
What crap they're showing on Channel 20 at 4 o'clock in the morning. And sometimes it was bad sitcoms. Um, but also Firehair is in here, and he's just sitting there going, whatever spell brought me here, I'm the patience of a deer and wait until it ends.
Yeah,
In other words, Firehair, you shouldn't eat the peyote at the party last night because now
yeah.
you're
That
hallucinating.
mm.
But I like the character. I'm kind of interested. It's a nice character design. And he's fully created by Joe Kubert.
okay.
Oh,
No
okay.
writer credit. I was so it's kind of like I'd really like to see it because I don't think I've ever seen a bad Joe Kubert comic. It may not be written, but it's a nice design. It's a
Well,
nice design.
I had a couple other thoughts about this page. One, you know, Binky says to Tommy Tomorrow, "This disaster is great, isn't it, Tommy Tomorrow?" And at the end of Crisis, of course, they said there was no great disaster that created Commandy, but instead the character who was Commandy and didn't go through the great disaster would become Tommy Tomorrow. So
I
it's weird
I liked
foreshadowing.
I really liked that retro continuity,
Mm-hmm.
that based on a decision, that person's always going to be a hero.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I would Crisis, what we're going to talk about when we get through this a little bit, is I kind of some of the things that forced them to do created interesting stories. Because when I was looking up Space Ranger, he dies in Twilight 3. The
Mm.
the the Garcia Lopez drawn, and I forgot who wrote it.
I think it was Howard Chaykin.
Chaykin wrote it, and Garcia Lopez drew it. And Tommy's a piece of shit in that.
Yeah.
He's a dictator.
Yeah.
And it's a really good Elseworld. And I liked Tommy Tomorrow, who I knew him. My brother had some. He's one of the few I remember. But that is cool because there are some retroactive continuity. We know now, like Booster is the father of Rip Hunter, and Corky does all these weird things because they've used him over and over again. But the Tommy Tomorrow Kazar Commandy link, I kind of always like that too. So had either of you read any Angel and the Ape?
I've read the Phil Foglio, 3 out of the 4 issues of the Phil Foglio series from the early '90s,
I remember
where
thumbing through that. I don't remember.
Yeah,
they're
I
fun.
got those. They
Where
are.
I
Go
I
ahead,
was just gonna
Kirby.
say, Angel and Dumb Bunny are revealed to be sisters. So hey, I was able to tie it back into the splash page.
Well, yeah,
Mhm.
that was the other thing that I noticed about it. But yeah, this was the first time they ever appeared in the same panel together. And
Yeah.
eventually, they became sisters.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and Joe Staten knows how to draw a female figure.
Yes, he does.
He also knows how to tell. Lois has the similar body type, but there's also the way that he sits them.
Yep.
That these are supposed to be. She's a comedic character. She
Mm-hmm.
perceived as ditzy
Mm-hmm.
in the comic. I think even in the original, and Dumb Bunny is very sexist and very this,
Yeah.
but it's a comedy book, so they're all kind of the guys in the team aren't any smarter than her in Inferior Five. I think she handled the brains of that team ultimately, um, as well. But I like Angel's part in the story, because I read the original ones because my brother had them and I read them because it was, and they were nice. They were funny. I got them. I mean, they were a funny book. I think this may have been the first time I had seen them, but I like this. And I like that her and Bat Lash and Tommy, um, go off in Tommy's spaceship for this team up. And who would have ever thought, let's put Angel from Angel and the Ape, Bat Lash and Tommy Tomorrow in an adventure together. And that's like the good thing about some of these big character crossovers, the weird team ups. This is probably the weirdest one, maybe.
Yeah, yeah, because like the space one, that's very safe, honestly, where it's,
Yeah.
3, 4 Justice Leaguers and someone who fits in perfectly. Because next page we get what? Or a couple pages, we get the Sea Devils, where it's one of those Sea Devils. I know that who they are collectively. If you ask me to name a one, couldn't do it.
Well, I did their thing, and they did not appear much. They've probably appeared more since Crisis, just in the background of stories where you need to have water heroes nearby.
Mm-hmm.
But they didn't have many appearances. They're Dane Dorrance, Biff Bailey, Judy Walton, and Nikki Walton. So again, it's the main scientist, his best friend, his girlfriend, and her girlfriend's little brother.
Boy, where have we seen that formula before?
Huh.
When did they first appear? Hold on a second. They were they're in that showcase. So it's their issues are kind of like yeah, they first appeared in Showcase 27, and they appeared in 27, 28, and 29. 3 issues, because at that point they were all getting like 3 or 4 issue tryouts, and then Time Master got 2 issues, skipped 2 issues, and then did 2 issues. But it's the same premise. It's, you know, it's the traditional 4-part superhero team. I think they're close. You know, it's like FF, as I always compare them to Challengers Unknown, but everybody else was a ripoff. But and we get to see Dolphin.
Look, Josie draws her very well, like swimming through like all the debris in the water. It looks really good.
Yeah, I like it. Where did she have her own, or was she in an Aquaman?
She did well. She first appeared in Showcase, but I don't think she appeared regularly until the Peter David wrote her into his Aquaman run in the 90s.
Okay. So was she the cover character for her Showcase, or was she a backup character?
She was the cover character. Let's blah, 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 blah. What issue was that? That was
there's
79.
Sugar and Spike.
Yeah, and Sugar and Spike, I checked. They were never in Showcase. So
I know. Yeah.
But it's clearly them.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was thinking maybe they had reprinted it, and I had to Google a bit to go, were they just in a backup, but they only appeared in their own comic. I had thought they had been in other people's comics in the background, but what I saw was not really.
Yeah.
But they ran for 115, 113 issues, Sugar and Spike.
Okay. I'm guessing just Joe Staton decided to have some fun and throw him in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you're gonna, his art and Sheldon Mayer's art similar in some ways. I like it. I like that it was in there. Because I do like them. Their strips are fun little kid strips. They always were. I just read the Legend, them as private detectives, paranormal detectives, which was from this DC Legends anthology, and then reprinted in a small trade. I read it on the app, and it was actually really good.
Honestly, the MVP of that miniseries.
Yeah, I was surprised. Giffen writing it, and I can't remember.
Bill Quisevely.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah,
a lot of fun. But my brother liked funny animal comic. He liked every comic, every style, so I was very lucky. So, and then we get the Teen Titans and the Metal Men. And I'm glad it's only the Titans that were in the issue that was in Showcase.
Oh, okay. Because like I know Hawk and Dove were members of the Titans by this point, at least. So I wasn't, but yeah, I guess in their own issue of Showcase, yeah.
Well, yeah, and it didn't have the later members like Mal or Lilith or.
Yeah, it just had, because that's where Wonder Girl first appears with the Titans. Is in the I
think she was in the second Brave and the Bold.
Brave and the Bold. Yeah, she was. Okay, now you're thinking, yeah. But I like Joe Drawn. I like his Donna. I like his Wally.
Except that's the ticket flasher, and I'm like, which Paul does not know what that means?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Like I normally don't like to harp on those little ones, but sometimes I can't help myself.
Yeah, well, some of the nicknames, they would have to know, because that's an archaic term. Now, I don't think anybody would. If I said that in front of someone in their 20s, they would have no idea what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah. But for a second, I thought the giant green dinosaur was Beast Boy. But but this is 4-color process. You have to pick your color choices carefully.
Yeah.
Right.
Cut back to the spaceship, and then they get the Phantom Stranger in. I love Phantom Stranger.
Same here.
Was this the first time we ever saw him in space?
Ooh.
Maybe isn't one of his when they make him a Justice Leaguer? No, it's not a space.
No, because they're in Vermont in that whole. He's I think no, because there is a point where I think he votes for Wonder Woman to rejoin on the satellite. See, this is why I like doing big rereads when I complete a run. Then I can answer these questions for you.
But I like seeing him, and this week I had a book I'd ordered a book from In Stock Trades called DC's Misfits of Magics by Matthew Dow Smith. And it's basically an all ages book. I want to try it out. His art, I see his art on thing. And it's basically all the magic characters as like 14-year-olds
Okay.
being forced to go to a summer camp, and like Blue Beetle's a kid, they're all kids, and the head counselor is the Phantom Stranger. And he's got a baseball cap and he's got a lanyard with his ID and his little thing. And Zatanna is like the counselor. She's like, oh, today we're gonna make spirit bracelets. It's actually very cute. And this character Ricky, who is the sister of Doctor, a little teen, like her little brother will be Doctor, grow up to be Doctor Occult, and her and Blue Devil are just like, this stuff's boring. Let's go explore. But it's a cute little book. But I loved it when the Phantom Stranger showed up as the head counselor. I giggled. My wife was funny because you're not going to get the joke, but I find it very amusing. But I like Phantom Stranger. I read the Aparo stuff. I think that's all I ever really read. And
Yeah.
I bought that big Omni. It was on really cheap sale. And I wanted to kind of let's get it. And I'm glad I did. There's a lot of stuff I'd never read it. The Joe Orlando stuff is in there. The 50 stuff is the art's beautiful. The stories are very different, but it's neat. And I liked how he would jump in and out of Justice League when they needed a magic character before they had Zatanna.
Yeah, a friend of my dad's gave him a bunch of old comics around this time, and included among it were like the last 20 issues of the Phantom Stranger series. So I was somewhat familiar with the character, although I never read the early stuff.
Yeah, that's the good thing about that Omni. It's got the 50 stuff in it with the really early stuff where people know who the hell he is. And he goes into Sky. It's weird. It's very weird. He's not as metaphysical as he ends up being. But I remember the Adams stuff. My brother was a big fan of it. But I like this. And then he summons the Spectre, which is great. So the Spectre's in it, but not that I don't. Now that you guys mentioned that the Hour Man stuff's not in it, it's really weird. But is this the first time the Phantom Stranger and the Spectre have teamed up?
I think so. And
Yeah, I think so.
And again, to the strength of this book, where I've seen these two do almost this exact same thing a couple of times since, it's like, no, this still works in this story 1,000%. Where he's pushing it back into orbit.
Yeah. I like that version of this version of the Spectre, that he's the agent of vengeance. When I did my little homework on him, and that he has siblings that I didn't realize he had Asmodel, which is an angel in mythology, was his original host, and then it was Jim Corrigan, then Hal, then Atticus Allen. So he's had two cops, a fighter pilot, and an angel be his host. But I kind of like him more as the big metaphysical Deus Ex Machina thing sometimes. Because my first experience with him were the age inappropriate Siegel Aparo stuff my brother handed me when I was way too young for,
Oh, those Fleischer ones? Yeah.
Yeah, the Fleischer ones, the Mike Fleischer one. Yeah. But this is cool. This is very much like, I don't know which Crisis storyline in Justice League, but he stands between two planets holding them apart.
Isn't that Infinite Earths? Or no, before this?
No.
There's one in the 60s where he's trying to keep Earth 1 and Earth 2 from smashing into each other or something like that.
Yeah, and it's not always the I don't have I'm not the biggest fan of some of those middle JLA, JSA team ups. You know what I mean? Definitely don't like the one with where they meet Carrie Bates and and Elliot S. Magan. But I do like him in this one, and Joe draws him really well.
Yes, he does.
Yeah, and this panel is it's I really dig it. Now we're going to transition to 24, where we see Lois and the Challengers and Creeper. They're headed to the Rocky
Yep.
Mountains where they find, I guess it's the alien base, and have to avoid missiles, or those.
No, I think aren't those coming from
Oh,
the?
that's coming from them. Yeah, that's coming.
Yeah, it's for whatever reason it's that there were the ship in outer space wasn't shooting missiles, but the cube on Earth is for whatever reason.
Yeah.
And how they find the entrance into this cube, that's one of those okay, we just need to move the story along. We got like 8 pages left, guys.
Yeah, it does speed up and start overlapping. I like seeing this is not that fortified a base, because all it takes is Rocky standing on Creeper's shoulders to open the door, and then
Mm-hmm.
Lois jumps in ahead of him so she can get in first, and then they can't open the door.
Yeah, no, that's a pretty good contrivance.
Yeah.
We could easily open it once.
Yeah. For Spectre, and then we get Spectre gets a whole half page when he starts to push the thing, but he fails in 2 panels at the top of a page as we rush to the end. But then our next spaceship comes. I do like this teaming: Angel, Tommy, and Batlash.
Past, present, and future.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And they cut a hole in it. She jumps in and it closes.
Yeah, because Batlash tricked, and it's like, which one of us is the most expendable?
Yeah. I'm not being chivalrous. I'm just trying to say. And I like how Lois fights the robots using judo, and Angel just
Gets
kind of
lucky.
ducks. Yeah,
Yeah.
just gets lucky.
It's like it's not the best. Like if Lucille Ball was fighting a bunch of robots.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this is just something I noticed last night. Black and white, you got little parallels between the two.
Oh yeah, black hair and white hair.
Yeah. But I do like that they're the heroes of this book.
Yep.
You know, that I think you might see in social media now, if this was written now, they would go, "Oh, it's woke because the girl saved the day," or something. It's like, but this is 1978, and they decide, the 2 writers decide that I want the human the least power. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
I don't want it to be someone being punched out. I'm going to have the 2 female characters at the end who have no powers just outthink the bad guy.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And fight through, because they're crawling, as they get closer to wherever they're going, it just gets more and more painful, and it could kill them.
Yeah, yeah. I think Angel says, like, I see a light at the end of the tunnel. Oh, wait, is that good or bad?
Yeah. And then we get to see page 30, where we see
This is my favorite splash page.
this
Oh,
is
yeah.
really, really
This is
good. And
great.
Cyril doesn't make it look silly. It's just
No.
he's cute in the middle, but it's like they're amplifying all their thoughts, their will, through Green Lantern's lamp, Phantom Stranger, and Spectre's powers to push the planets back into place.
Again, like this is kind of like at the end of Crisis when Spectre's fighting the Anti-Monitor, and you got all the magic people fueling them.
Yeah. Just another way this comic presages the crisis.
Yeah. I like the celebration behind the Spectre, behind Phantom Stranger on page 31.
Oh, I just noticed House Guy's arm around Cyril.
Yeah.
Hey, little buddy, how you doing?
God, what was I read something recently, or was it? I forgot what it. But I hate to blame. But it was that Sugar and Spike. Remember in the Grail Green Lantern, he had the little starfish alien on his shoulder every once in a
Yes.
while. Yeah, where they're finding out they're fakes of those all over the world. Collectors have all these fake ones of them. Maybe he's looking for a new sidekick here. But they put the Earth back, but we get to see. I like on page 33, 33, 32, where the two women they've met up and they each found different panels and
We're just ripping stuff out and hoping some of this works, honestly.
yeah. And part of it is there's a guiding hand for Angel on the next page, which is the Phantom Stranger, I assume.
Yeah, that's
yeah.
because it's always one of those. Phantom Stranger is the most powerful, but he can't act directly, which is always kind of like, how direct is direct?
Yeah, it's like he influences other people to do the right thing.
Yes, it's very much him. And the next DC Marvel crossover is the Watcher and the Phantom Stranger team up to manipulate people.
I read it.
Yeah.
Hey, I didn't want to do that. I know, but don't you feel better for doing it? And then the aliens leave, and I like the final page. It's just you see the different team ups, watching how everything's settling, and Lois and Angel. Angel's crying, and Lois goes, "It's okay, Angel. You can stop crying. Come on now. It's over. You're a hero. I know, Miss Lane. It's just this is the first time I've ever been so happy about breaking something." It's a nice, I mean, I like that ending. I like that that the two non-powered, basically, one's a comic relief character, and the other is, just a secondary character in a superhero book. I mean, at this point, she is more, she drives the stories a little more, but not like this. And it's such a good one and done comic.
Yep.
Yeah, it is. And like I'm going back to what I said earlier. The fact that it, as good as it is, that it was just done on, on a monthly schedule. They weren't given a year of prep time to map this out and figure out how to squeeze everything in. So it's amazing that they got it done as good as it was in that time frame.
Yeah, it is. And 32 pages. I like these big giant comics. I think DC, and then I liked it back then when you would have a regular size comic and then certain books were bigger with reprints, or they have these specials where you got 32 pages of comic for 60 cents. That's insane.
Yeah. And like I mentioned earlier, this was one of the first comics I ever bought. So this was the first 60-cent comic I ever bought.
Yeah, because what were they about this point? 35 cent?
Yeah.
For single? 35 cent?
35.
Yeah. So, all right. Overall, and I'll start is overall, I think this is incredibly, I know why it is so popular with a lot of comic fans, because it's just so well crafted. It's fun, it's silly, it's got a good action sequence. The characters are very true to themselves. They're not really changing anything. And it's a celebration of anthology comics, which, we should have more of. I think if you could put, I'd love to see both industries try to put more physical media back in stores, disposable versions of it, like have comics like they were doing it while CW was on. They were putting out in Walmart. My brother works in Walmart. There's those 100-page things that had one news story and a bunch of old stories. I think that's a great way to get kids hooked. And they weren't expensive. They kept the price point down to make it so if a mom or dad wanted to buy their kid, and it was big enough that, not to say you're buying something to distract your kid, but something to keep it entertained, keep the kid brain moving and entertained. And reading even a comic book is better than I'd rather a kid be reading a comic book than playing a shoot 'em game. And so a friend of ours, her son turned 13, and he was like, "I want to watch the John Wick movies." And my wife goes, "Would you?" I said, "No, do not give that to a 13-year-old. Do not let him watch that. The killing of a dog is bad enough, but the violence is no, not age appropriate." But to have something like this, which is fun, all ages would get it. We get it as someone who we've all read it multiple times, and it's still entertaining. I think it's just great. What about you, Kirby?
No, I think again we can't, like I said, I'm a Bronze Age heart at heart. And this definitely kind of holds up from that perspective. Are there some bits of where like the plot is don't think too hard about it? Sure.
Yeah,
Is it a
yeah,
lot
yeah.
of fun? Absolutely. And like again, for 32 pages of a done in one story, you got to enjoy that because I really do kind of miss just being able to sit down and read a done in one, and this is a really good one. And geez, oh, I had another point I forgot. Sorry, but yeah, no, absolutely. DC, just reprint this. Do a facsimile edition of it. Get it back out there.
That'd be a great one. This would be a good one to do a facsimile one or a larger
Definitely.
or a treasury reprint kind of one.
Oh
Hmm.
yeah, that'd be great.
Oh
Yeah, I'd
yeah.
like to see this blown up on nice paper and not recolored like in new colors, but
But
with the new processes. Still do the
y-
4-4 color. Don't change it when, they've made, I think DC's learned, I hope, from Swamp Thing and a couple other books where they messed it up by modernizing it. But this
Mhm.
would be a good one to be repeat. What about you, Ted?
Well, this has just been a big part of why I love comics. I mean, I was just barely into comics when I first read it, and it a lot of times people would complain. They'd say, "Oh, well, all this time travel and all these characters, it's so confusing." But I didn't find it confusing. I found it intriguing. It was pulling
Yeah.
me in. I wanted to know more about Space Ranger. I wanted to know more about Angel and the Ape and Inferior Five, and just these weird one-off characters. And I mean, I loved it so much that a couple of years ago when I was doing my vlog, I was going to do an episode, and I ended up going on for like over 2 hours, just myself. I mean,
Mm.
and I ended up had to break it up into multiple parts just for file size reasons. Um, but yeah, there's just so much to pour to dive into and explore and think about, and it's just amazing, not just what it was at the time, but how much again it foreshadowed so much of what was to come in DC and comics in general in the next decade for Crisis and then beyond.
Yeah, uh, it is one of these, it is such a perfect little comic in so many ways. And I agree with you. What I like about the whole time travel thing is just they talk about it just at the beginning, just so you know why there's so many characters around. And then
mm.
it's all about solving the mystery and fighting the alien and characters from different eras and books that shouldn't be together. I mean, I think really the most normal grouping is the Justice Leaguers and Space Ranger. That doesn't seem that
Yeah.
odd. They run into people in space all the time,
Right, right.
but the Angel, Batlash, Tommy Tomorrow, Lois, the Challengers, and the Creeper.
Yeah.
Um, it's just a lot of fun. I love it. Um, so let's talk about the the crisis in the room. Is this is I if Marv Wolfman did not think of this book when he started thinking about Crisis on Infinite Earth, the the big a series that changed comics.
Hmm.
Probably it changed how we it it really brought in the like of the sides of some fans loved Crisis on Infinite Earth, some hated it, some all that stuff. But the big event, how he had to have been thinking of this, had to have been. I
Yeah.
don't know his history of that, but it, this is as good as that in one issue is as good in that. And I think Crisis on Infinite Earth, it's its 40th anniversary this year.
Oh wow.
Right, right.
Yeah, I got my back. I don't buy back issue regularly, but I ordered the one that's for next month. It came in advance and it came, and it's it's probably one of the last pieces Art Prez did.
Oh.
He did the cover. It's all the dead folks in one
Ooh.
shot. And it's an art. I haven't read it, started reading it, but it's making me think about, since it's the anniversary, I probably will be doing something on the podcast about it because Crisis is so important, and we don't have Crisis without this book. I mean, what do you guys think about how much it influenced or
this walked so kind of Crisis could run. No, it also
Mm.
that also creates the unfortunate after effect of the overuse of events since Crisis on Infinite
Yeah.
Earths. But I'm not going to blame this issue for that because that's a whole other. There's a lot of other factors in there, but story wise, yeah. And
Oh yeah.
having
Yeah.
the limitation of you can only use characters in Showcase outside of Sugar and Spike, like that, it's one of those where limitation breeds creativity, and
Yes. Putting
Right.
putting
Right.
guardrails on it. Yeah.
mhm.
Yeah, because I mean, obviously, if you weren't given that limitation, of course, you'd have to have Superman in it,
Yep.
and things like that. And I do appreciate how Lois Lane, who has been around as long as Superman, because she appeared right alongside Superman in Action Number One. She was very prominent in the issue, and it's just a great encapsulation, specifically of celebrating just the showcase series. Not even it wasn't celebrating all of DC. It was just showcase, but then showcase itself, the series, um, that had such a massive impact. I mean, literally, it launched the Silver Age of comics.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's a great celebration of that, and then of course as it moved into the Bronze Age, and I mean, literally like in I got the Crisis on Infinite Earths box set, and one of the books included in the box set was like the story behind the Crisis, and you open it up, and the very first paragraph, it says that the whole idea of the Crisis started because of Showcase number 100.
Wow.
There you
So
go.
it's not our opinion that this book influenced Crisis. It is the official opinion of DC Comics.
Is that the big box set that has it and like a bunch of other graphic novel or
Yeah,
collection?
it's got like reprints all of the JLA, JSA team ups and all of the Crisis tie-ins.
Well, that's cool. Yeah, I've had so many different versions of Crisis. I bought the oversized one. They just did a redo because they'd fixed the coloring.
Mm.
They'd done a one of the hardcovers was terrible coloring. But yeah, I remember because I was working. I graduated, but I was going back to the comic shop I grew up to get issues, and I remember I was in a fraternity and it was pledge night the night before and the party afterwards. And I way back to my apartment. I stopped at a 7-Eleven for something to put in my stomach because there was way too much beer. And there was Crisis 12 on the rack. So I went home took an herbal remedy for my hangover. And it was just crazy. That I found, I mean, I read it and I loved it. So all right. We're gonna wrap this up real quick. But yes, we do get Crisis on Infinite Earths, all the others. And I will probably be planning a Crisis podcast episode, at least one for the anniversary. I'm gonna kind of go and look at read that back issue and get some ideas. So before we say goodbye, anybody have any quick recommendations for anybody? Or
Um, I would just like to recommend anybody who hasn't already listened to it, that they check out not just Ross's Let's Team Up shows, but also Kirby's Captain Carrot shows. I mean,
oh
I
my God.
I loved Captain Carrot when it came out, and I would pass it around to my friends, and they all loved it. I was the only one who loved it enough to pay for it, but they loved reading it, and so Kirby, you've done a great job, and not just with the coverage, but also with the voices. You've done. I love
Yeah,
you. I
man.
love your Captain Carrot
Yes.
That,
voice.
thank you. That I gotta say, the one that hurts the most is Pig Iron because it's all really right up here. It's not quite Harvey Fias, not quite Harvey
No,
Fias scene, but it really hurts the throat.
I would, but that'd be who you'd cast in the cartoon, Harvey Firestein. I think that I would
Yeah,
go with that.
yeah.
My big recommendation, for me was I've already said it that the Matthew Dow book. If you just like fun comic, I'm probably going to gift this book to friends' kids because I'd like to see someone. I like an all age. I like a one and done. It's 126 pages, but it's all one and done book. And it's all ages. And this comic is that you could give this comic to someone who's never read a comic book and they'd want to read it. So
Yeah.
all right, gentlemen, thank you for being
Oh,
on.
My recommendation is going to be Annihilation. It's definitely one of the best crossover events Marvel's ever done. So definitely check that one out. It's Giffen and then landing at some of their best. So
Yeah.
check out Annihilation.
Yep, looking out for the Epic collection.
Oh yeah, they are doing it. Yeah, it's all
Yeah.
one and done. I've got mine in the 2 trades, which was nice. It's a great. I read it for the first time through like 2 years ago. I still got to read the sequel. So, all right, gentlemen, thank you again. And everybody, as always, be safe, be smart. Please be kind to one another and read some comics. Read Showcase 100 any way you can.